Hello and welcome everyone to Endo Black Incorporated's Mocktails and Cocktails. Let's talk mental health. I'd briefly like to introduce our guest panelists. And just for namesake, I'm Teri Cabrera. I'm based in Texas. Have endometriosis as well as I run a mental health nonprofit on the side outside of my full time. Okay, so first up we have Francesca Owoo. She is based out of the Bronx, New York. So Dr. Francesca Owoo is the founder of FKO Therapy and Consultation Services, LLC, an online private practice with a focus on couples and families navigating the complex world of chronic illness. She's licensed as a mental health therapist in Maryland and New York. Dr. Owoo graduated from a doctoral program with a marriage and family therapy specialization from the University of Akron in Ohio. She also has a Master's of Science in Mental Health Counseling and a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology from her beloved alma mater, the University of Duke. While working on her PhD, she was diagnosed with fibroids, stage 4 endometriosis, and adenomyosis, which would result in multiple surgeries. Both parents would also be diagnosed with cancer, and her brother would experience complications with sickle cell disease. Having these personal experiences with chronic illness has driven her passion to work with this population exclusively. And give a round of applause for Dr. Owoo. So next up, we have Miss Shakira O'Garro. She's based out of the Bronx, New York, just right down the street from Dr. Owoo, okay? Shakira O'Garro is the licensed mental health counselor, LMHC, who has a decade of experience treating BIPOC women with depression, anxiety, trauma, chronic pain, and terminal illnesses across the US. Shakira takes a person-centered, genuine, and eclectic approach that others often find safe, explorative, and meaningful. So they love Miss O'Garro. That's what I get this. She has a passion for endometriosis advocacy and education, given her lived experience with endometriosis and adenomyosis. She facilitates a monthly endometriosis support group and ongoing group chat. Let's give a round of applause for Miss O'Garro. And last and surely not least, we have Miss Lyndsey Williams. She's currently in Seattle, Washington. Lyndsey is a Baltimore and Maryland native and a proud HBCU graduate of the Morgan State University. Lyndsey obtained her master's in social work from the University of Maryland, Baltimore. After being assigned the social worker to an OBGYN clinic, she became passionate about women's mental health and wellness. Over the years, Lyndsey has trained and become certified in women's reproductive psychology and perinatal mental health, and currently runs her private practice in Seattle, Washington. Lyndsey opened Kyla Care LLC in 2020, before COVID or after COVID hit? Before, woo! Kyla Care is a women's mental health private practice offering mental health support and wellness coaching products related to reproductive mental health like perinatal depression and anxiety, coping with infertility, endometriosis, gender identity, mood issues related to menstruation, or vasomotor and mood disruption during perimenopause. As a mother herself, Lyndsey understands firsthand how important it is for women to have a safe space to discuss how their health is influencing them mentally and within their personal lives. Let's give a round of applause for Ms. Williams. And I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today. Let's go ahead and jump right into the first question for tonight. It's National Mental Health Awareness Month. All of you are advocates for mental health awareness and or wellness. Why have you decided to be in this industry?
Do you want the long answer or the short answer?
We have time. Give me that long answer.
So both my brother, father, and my sister who passed have sickle cell disease. So I kind of grew up in the hospital setting, in and out, watching my brother suffer several sickle cell crises. And then as I got older, I knew I wanted to focus specifically on the sickle cell disease population. But then I started getting sick in my doctoral program and started doing more research on fertility issues, reproductive concerns. So I wanted to make sure that I'm falling in line with what's happening with my family and also with mental health, because we tend to leave out the mental health piece when we're talking about anything that's going on with our physical body. Short answer.
All right, thank you so much. Lyndsey or Shakira, whichever one.
I can
Okay.
go next. I'm in this industry honestly because I love it. And I think that discovering this specialty for me was kind of a meeting of two worlds. When I was young, I was very lucky to have a mother and a grandmother who communicated their reproductive health to me, things to look out for, things to be mindful of, like as I was growing into a woman. And I was even kind of aware of other stories that we kind of keep quiet in families, like about miscarriage or about like not being able to have kids or endometriosis, fibroids particularly. So when I got to do this and see that there was a special way and a special population, you know, to really dig deeper and learn more about like our body, mind, and how we can communicate with ourselves and how our health influences our mental health, I was sold because I felt like I always knew about that, and I want to make just increase the awareness and conversation in general.
All right, thank you. Ms. O'Garro, you can go ahead and go.
Yes, I always knew that I had an interest in mental health from a young age. People have always been drawn to me, felt comfortable. I was always just like a good listener and a caretaker. But going into the field and learning and working in the field, I realized like I just have a passion for those who are suffering. And then going through my own like journey with endometriosis and going through like, for lack of a better word, like suffering, you know, a hot mess with my own endo journey just made me realize how many women are really struggling out here and don't attend to the mental health piece of this at all. It's just like really advocating and trying to get the physical health, not knowing that ignoring the mental health piece has negative impact on the physical piece as well. So just meeting other women who have suffered, you know, also thinking about access to care issues in our communities for people who look like us, really informs my passion for this work and why I decided to go into it and dedicate my life to it.
All right, thank you so much. So from what I hear everybody saying is we talk about that passion, overall interest, as well as the things that you all have gone through in your home and family lives, as well as experiencing endometriosis brought you to this space of working in mental health. Let's bring us to our next question. So what is your endo story? For those with endo, how were you diagnosed and how did it affect your life? And for those of you who consider yourselves an endometriosis advocate, why is raising awareness matter?
So once again, I'll try and give the short version because the long version is a bit too much. I was actually diagnosed with fibroids first, and that diagnosis came, I think, maybe around 2011. Honestly, during that time, I can't remember the dates because there was so much going on at one time. Honestly, I didn't really pay attention to my mental health now that I'm thinking about it. I hadn't urinated in about 24 hours. And I was on the phone with my best friend's mom and she said, "You need to go to the hospital." I said, "No, I'm fine. My cycles just last a little bit too long. I should be fine." And then I woke up on the floor. So I passed out thinking that someone had robbed me. When I drove myself to the ER because I didn't want to incur any sort of charges. So I drove myself to the ER and was at the transvaginal sonogram. Did that. I was there for about maybe 3 hours. And this little lady walks in and she says, "Oh, your uterus is completely fibrous." I'm like, "What does that mean? I thought I had cysts." She's like, "No, it's just non-cancerous tumors. You'll be fine." And then fast forward to things are getting a little bit intense in my doctoral program. I think maybe around 2015, my advisor had passed away. So I started teaching over classes. And I noticed I just kept gaining weight, hair falling out, throwing up majority of the time. I spent majority of my time on the bathroom floor. So thank God for having a big bathroom. And researching this, I didn't know what endometriosis was. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, this is a white woman's disease. I've never heard of any Black women talking about having endometriosis. The fibroids must be really bad. Eventually, when I had surgery for the fibroids, the doctor discovered that my uterus was backwards, ovaries were connected to the uterus, my intestines were connected to the uterus, and then connected to my rectum. So it was diagnosed as stage 4 endometriosis. Then I had a 7-hour surgery to remove some of it, but not all of it. So I still have one large fibroid, maybe a few inches away from my spine, and some endometriosis, I think in the cul-de-sac or the rectum. At this point, it's there. So I have to learn how to actually mentally and physically cope with it.
Thank you so much. That was a lot. I'm so grateful that you're sharing that. We all would agree in our research and trying to figure out what's going on. Only thing you see is white women talking about it. For me and my family, I always knew about fibroids, to be mindful of that. Not kind of what pain would be like, but okay, we get fibroids, be mindful. Not endometriosis. Well, I think when I first saw it in a text message from my mom is Mexican, so I didn't grow up with her. I was like, endometriosis. That sounds like nothing for me. But it's a lot. Thank you for sharing. Who wants to share next?
I'll go. I guess my story is a lot to try to see if I can condense it and make it cohesive, coherent, because it's just a bewildering experience. I started having like a lot of pain with my period and going in and out of the hospital, like the ER, since I was like 11. It started to pick up once I got into my early to mid 20s. I had a gynecologist who was Black, and I was just starting with her and I was kind of explaining what was going on. She sent me for imaging after I lost 60 pounds because she felt my issues were due to obesity. She did a transvaginal. On the transvaginal report, it said I had adenomyosis, and she never told me. So I didn't even know what was going on there. I continued to get sicker and sicker. I started having pain off my period. And knowing myself, I just always like researched and looked up things. So I just kept like looking like reasons why you'll have pain off of your period or have pelvic pain off of your period, and endometriosis came up. I had actually talked to a coworker about it, and it turned out his cousin had severe endometriosis, and she recommended her GYN to me. I went to him. He did like an 1.5-hour surgery, had relief for like 2 months, and then I started having horrendous pain. And then for 3 years, going from specialist to specialist, from doctor to doctor, people telling me I was too big to operate, and people telling me like, well, you just had a surgery, so we can't operate, and people making me take Lupron and all of this other stuff. Finally, I had lost 38 pounds and got in with a specialist who did perform surgery. Endometriosis had spread and went so deep that they had to take my appendix in this last surgery. I still have adenomyosis, don't know where it's at. I still have some heavy bleeding, but my periods have been much more managed since my last surgery. But it was just like a lot of it was just medical trauma and gaslighting and refusal of care. Even though on paper, I had access to care. I had insurance, I made decent wage, had an education, but none of that had a bearing on getting care for this disease. So that's my story. it was a hot mess, but you know, God is good. I'm here. I'm better, you know, each day, trying to figure it out and trying to raise awareness for people who are suffering and have no idea what's going on.
Oh my goodness, Shakira, thank you so much for sharing. That's something that I see. It's so common to hear in those stories is the medical trauma, the gaslighting, the constant, oh, you'll be fine. Oh, well, we can't do anything for you right now. And then the pushing of Lupron. My experience with Lupron, no, never again. Never again. I refuse anything like that ever again. But it's just, it's so common to hear in our endometriosis stories. It's just repetitive. But thank you so much for sharing. Lyndsey.
Well, as I appreciate you all for offering your stories. I am on this panel as an advocate for raising awareness. And as I shared earlier, like I've been aware of certain like female concerns or reproductive concerns that we have. And I have found that having that pre-knowledge has helped me create such a safe space for patients when they are having these experiences that you all are talking about, and a patient starts crying and they send them to me. There's no insight into, you know, a lot of times from practitioners, there's no insight into the emotional impact of these diagnoses or of the pain that's endured. So the first time I really came across endometriosis in the clinical space was after I had a patient who had a miscarriage. And she kind of, you know, just went on to say, well, and kind of dismissively, like, well, I have endometriosis. And I said to her, well, okay, so that means you've been dealing with, you know, hallmark symptoms, things like that, that we went over. And that was the first time that somebody had even kind of put two and two together for her, or made her feel like she wasn't at fault for her miscarriage that she had, or just made her feel seen in a way. And I realized the power of that. So I kind of, you know, just wanted to be better at it and continue like my training in those areas. So when it comes to being an advocate, I really focus on helping patients feel more comfortable in general. Like often when we talk about one condition, other stories start coming out. We hear about PCOS, we hear about, you know, different things happening. So it helps us to like not carry some of these burdens inside or to feel isolated or to feel unseen. I also like try to use my role to speak to practitioners. Like you guys are bringing up Lupron. We know that like with women who have irregular periods, like Lupron has a really bad mental health effect, like causing brain fog and things like that. So sometimes when I do see that, I'm like, yeah, I hear you guys talking about hormonal balancing, but like that's not the one to use. Like we already have like these menses concerns, right? So I try to use like my experience and work with my experience and work that I do with patients to also advocate with them when I see some of these things happening. And just to add to, like, I also try to just use my role to expand some insight for patients too. A lot of times when patients are going through these experiences, they're really focused on like just office visits and like relief and who to see next and who's going to diagnose them properly. Like usually when I talk to them, it's the first time that they're hearing about acupuncture, other holistic methods, different like massage techniques that help with scarring and things like that. So I also try to like expand their perspective and help empower them towards like their healing also.
All right, y'all. So I know I'm having some sound issues. Like I'm not very loud. Give me 1 minute to try to fix that real quick. I'm gonna go off camera.
So can I just say one thing, Shakira, when you had mentioned several doctors had told you that you were too big in order to perform surgery on, that irks my soul. I feel like whenever African-American women go into a medical setting for an appointment, the first thing they'll bring up is your weight. The first thing they'll bring up is your weight. Even when I was diagnosed, I was 135 pounds, I'm 5'3". Oh, you need to lose weight. From where? like, where am I supposed to lose the weight? That always seems to be the first diagnosis they want to go to is obesity. And you need to lose weight, or you need to exercise more, you need to change your diet. How about we do that transvaginal exam and see that my uterus is jacked? That should be the first methodology of finding a diagnosis. If a woman is telling you she's having her period for a month, 2 months, 3 months, isn't it just common sense? Or
It is, but you know, obesity, weight is the perfect scapegoat. You come in, you're in pain, they do all the tests, they run all the blood work, and they're like, you're healthy, you're fat, but you don't even have diabetes. I don't know what to do with you. All I can tell you is to take some ibuprofen and go on the treadmill. You'll be all right. And it's honestly, it's just negligence. It is poor care. It is, in my opinion, the arrogance of some of these practitioners who can't admit that I don't know what's wrong with you, but let's figure out who to get you to. And this happened to me multiple times with Black, white, Hispanic, everybody, right? Just like, well, you're mighty big. I'm like, but I'm in a mighty lot of pain too. Can we talk about that? So yeah, I met you.
before you got diagnosed?
You said what?
How many doctors did you see before you got diagnosed?
I would say 2 gynecologists. My first gynecologist, she didn't even take my pain seriously until I lost 60 pounds. Then she started talking about how good I looked, and she was just like, oh, like, you see like how much your life changes when you lose weight? And then I'm like, yeah, but I was in the emergency room yesterday and I don't know what's happening. I'm losing weight, I'm being active, I'm eating healthy, but I'm getting sicker. And then she sent me for a transvaginal ultrasound and an MRI, and still read the report to me in a follow-up appointment. Didn't mention anything about adenomyosis, didn't even read it. She was just like, oh, you have a couple of cysts, but she didn't even read that I had endometriosis. You know, I went to my friend's doctor, and he looked at the report and he immediately was like, you have adenomyosis. And he's like, you probably need to go in for surgery because you probably have endometriosis too. But he did ablation. I really, to this day, I think he just opened me up and just like threw the laser around and then was just like, oh, this is crazy. Let me just close her back up and make sure I get her on Lupron. He was pushing Lupron from right after my surgery for months.
Don't they have a lawsuit?
I did have a class action. I'm like, well, how do I get on that? It would be like the 4th class action this year, right? But yeah, hot mess.
It also gets me in the spirit of this conversation too. It gets me the obesity scapegoat, but it's not coupled with helpful nutrition for endometriosis. Like none of that is included in that conversation. So I try to pull that in, like if patients come see me, because I feel like that's a big thing that we can really, take control of and really feel good about managing our health with. And instead we, get fat shamed, right? Or just obesity shamed instead.
Most definitely, I would agree with that. Can y'all hear me better now? Okay. Most definitely, I would agree with that too. Because every time I go to the doctor, it's just like, oh, well, you're morbidly obese. Here's this printout. I just printed out for you. This is what you need to do. And I'm like, okay. Ask for a referral to the nutritionist. They give me the referral to the nutritionist. Insurance says, haha, no. But we'll cover bariatric surgery at 100%, But you seeing a nutritionist, we can't do that. I'm like, if I saw a nutritionist, I could probably eat for my body, which at least help me manage pain better. Is that not what we're trying to do? It's such a strange experience. And it's just so sad to hear everybody's story just over and over again. It's just like,
I was actually gonna, no, that's not what they're trained to do. They're trained to push medication and push unnecessary surgeries. Because it's so much easier to just, tell a Black woman, oh, you have a fibroid, you have endometriosis. Let's just cut out your entire uterus. That's what they did for how many decades, up until someone said, okay, this has to stop. I think it might have been starting in 2015. They did some research and noticed that women were just having unnecessary hysterectomies for the most minute issues. You could have like a 1 sentence, all of a sudden, let's have a hysterectomy. No, chill out. There's other options, but let me not go on my little tirade. So I don't want to get off subject.
It gets deep. I'm with you.
It definitely gets deep. We'll go to our next question. As we discuss mental health, there has been research that says women who have endometriosis have a higher risk of mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety, from the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, excuse me. Why do you think women who suffer from endo are more at risk?
I would say for all the reasons that we're talking about, right? It's really stressful for us to go to appointment after appointment and be turned away or shamed, right? It's very stressful to have things going on with your body that we're typically trained are private matters, right? Like our period is a private matter. So we're really keeping it to ourselves and keeping a lot of extra baggage and secrets because something is happening beneath the surface that we're really not supposed to talk about anyway. So it takes some time to even, for most people, to like get to a level where they even want to describe like what's happening to them. And so, I mean, from a clinical standpoint, right? Like when we're experiencing prolonged pain, when we're experiencing like frequent periods, we have a lot of hormonal fluctuations, but we also have like a rise in cortisol. And the more stress that we have and that we feel over a period of time, those depressive symptoms will start to see because the brain starts feeling that. And I would also say, like, if we are, all different organs in our body have a body mind, meaning that they communicate how they feel with our brain. And so our uterus has a body mind. And so when it's not feeling well, it's communicating that to us. And it could cause us to have like those same like mood symptoms. So that's important to recognize too.
I agree with what Lyndsey is saying, and to also speak to that further, like we think about pain as just like a physical experience, but it's also like a mental experience, right? And sometimes I feel like when we're trying to go from doctor to doctor to address the physical, we don't address like what you're learning and what your body is trying to do in your brain to address that pain too. And how like that long-standing dysregulation or upregulation increases pain, right? And that can make you feel depressed. You're in pain. You don't know when it's gonna end. You're trying to get help and do what you can. You also are limited, probably socially isolated, and that also creates anxiety too, right? All of these things together, it's like they almost become almost comorbid conditions, because it's like the clinical picture of endometriosis is uncertainty, suffering, and some of the treatments are barbaric. Like getting an IUD put in is painful. It's painful, right? And it's just like even just the treatment causes pain, suffering, depression, anxiety, and all of these things. So I really think like these are some key reasons why we're at risk, why we struggle with, even if it's passive, suicidal ideation, just like not knowing how else to get relief. So there's a lot of components to this that make us more at risk to be anxious, depressed.
And just to add to that is the gaslighting and the medical trauma that you experience in almost every single appointment. Like Shakira had mentioned, the first thing a doctor brought up was her weight. Imagine a doctor telling you that this is what your main issue is, and then you go home thinking, okay, so if I just lose weight, all the symptoms will go away. So of course, you're gonna have this unknown diagnosis with anxiety and depression, because like Shakira said and Lyndsey said, there's uncertainty. And I'm pretty sure they said it takes at least 10 years for a woman to be diagnosed with endometriosis. So imagine how many doctors you have seen in that time, and how many doctors have told you, oh, it's all in your head. How many times have we heard that it's all in your head? You're just depressed or you're just anxious. Here's some Wellbutrin, here's some amitriptyline, you should be perfectly fine. In a couple of months, you'll be perfectly fine. But in actuality, they're not really talking to you about your symptoms and running the tests that they need to actually do for you to get a diagnosis, or to even send you to potentially a case manager or a social worker who can help you process your feelings throughout the entire process. And I notice hospitals generally don't have that. That's another reason why I got into this field. This seeing my brother laying in a hospital bed and seeing my parents argue. And I'm thinking, okay, is someone going to come in here and stop this? This is the role of a case manager or a social worker to help families process diagnosis and illness. So imagine as a woman, you're going into these appointments by yourself if you're not partnered, and you're having to deal with all these emotions by yourself in isolation. You go home, maybe you're single and you live by yourself. Who's helping you process those emotions?
Can I make an addition? Because you really bringing up some things for me that I think are important. You know, disenfranchised grief comes up here, right? Like feeling that you're sensing something, you're sensing a loss, you're having an experience that nobody else can tap into, right? We can have partners, and partners be like, you know, like what's going, like some people have great partners, you know, we run a gamut, but at the end of the day, many people, not just partners, family members don't understand. There's been thankfully, a lot of advancements in medical care. So some of our like elders in our family, right, or women before us, they may feel very resigned when we go talk to them and we say like, well, we're having this or we're having that. And they're like, well, cut it out. That's a woman's issue. And after you have a surgery, you'll just kind of live in pain because like, that's the plight of a woman, I guess, or other, you know, ideas. And that was also because they didn't have a lot of medical opportunities that we have now. So like sometimes there's a disconnect with solutions because of like the advancement and the lack of care, like for women who came before us too.
I think that is so true. And it makes me just think about like the narratives that we're taught as Black women. And then think about the average age of impact for this disease, right? It's like you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s. Like that's like the thick of your life, the thick of your career, right? And as Black women, what are we taught? We're strong, we can shoulder the burdens. But like what happens when you can't even shoulder your own burden? Right? It's so jarring and like contrary to the sense of self. It really is. And it's like even just thinking about like womanhood, right? Like your uterus is full of adenomyomas, right? Or your tubes are full with fluid and blocked. You can't conceive naturally. And it's like all of these things, it can make anyone just feel like, wow, like everything that I hope for is uncertain or taken away. So I think you said it perfectly, Lyndsey, like that disenfranchised grief, right? Like that sense of grieving something that other people just really can't quite understand or understand like why you feel the way that you feel or why this is a grieving process for you. It's so true. I could go on for days. I could do a dissertation about this topic, right? But so true. And I really feel like good, like multidisciplinary treatments or approaches should include like psychology. Pain psychology is so important for conditions like this, but it's like missing. You can look through most of the major hospitals in New York and there's a multidisciplinary center for endometriosis and they're doing some like therapy things through other practitioners, but there's no social worker, there's no licensed mental health counselor, there's no psychologist, right? And then even when you're in pain, you're not thinking like, oh, I need to talk to somebody, but especially a Black woman. Like I need to tell somebody I'm feeling kind of weak. I'm feeling kind of terrible about this. But let me simmer down. Okay, I'm like.
Wow, that's what I was gonna get into next. That whole the Black woman as a superhero. I have to care. Go ahead.
I was about to say, don't forget who you surround yourself with that are also gaslighting you and not supporting you. You mentioned elders, and the first thing that came to mind is prayer. Listen, I'm a God-fearing woman, but please do not tell me pray on it when I am laying on the bathroom floor and I've had my cycle for the last 3 months. That is not what I want to hear. I want to hear that there are actual solutions. There's a medication that I can take that can stop this, something that, or someone that can actually help me. Or the friends who are not very supportive. Oh, you're always flaking. Well, I'm in pain right now. Hanging out with you and doing a little soft turn up is not what I'm about to do right now. I really don't care. So I'm not going to hang out. I'm going to stay here in this bed and I'm going to deal with my shit, sorry, by myself because no one seems to understand this. Even women our age, when I was being diagnosed, none of my friends had any fertility issues. So it was just, they just didn't understand what was going on. Why don't you come to New York? Because I was in Ohio at the time to see a doctor. I'm thinking I'm not flying to another state to see a doctor. Fast forward to now, when looking at the research or just the support groups on Facebook, there's so many women who are in areas that don't have endometriosis specialists that they will go to another state in order to find the treatment that they need. Imagine that, having to go to another state to get medical treatment, because there are quite a few doctors that will say, oh, I can treat endometriosis. No, you can't. You need to understand that endometriosis comes in so many forms and so many colors and way it presents itself in the body. And it's not just a reproductive issue. You can have endometriosis on the brain, on the heart, on your esophagus. There's so many areas where endometriosis can present itself. So if I'm going into the hospital for intense migraines, you might want to check some things out, just saying. But once again, I could go on and on about this topic because I think just as an endo warrior, there's a tinge of anger with how long it takes to be diagnosed and then trying to help other women to make sure that they're not going through the same issue as you so that they actually have the support that you wish you had when you were going through the process.
Right. Thank you. That ties into.
I'm sorry, Teri.
Go ahead.
I was that friend though. And I'm saying that on this screen because I am here as an advocate and I do this work and I look at myself in the mirror cross-eyed sometimes when I think about how I was that friend, which is why I'm glad that we're having this talk and that people see like this whole thing. I peg my friend as flaky as can be, almost to the point where I'd be like, I'll invite her, but I know she'll tell me no. Right, or things like that. And I didn't really, take it that personally. But when I think back on these things, like I am saying, like, if you are the friend that doesn't have like some of these conditions, then ask your friend how they're doing. Ask your friend if you can bring something over for them. Ask them if they need help, like getting groceries that day or just ordering DoorDash for them that day, or things like that, because it is an unseen condition, right? And so we can really make assumptions about people around us. So I just want to say that because I do feel, shamed at times with like how these things come up in our personal life. We say all this stuff like on platforms and stuff. And then like when somebody next to us is going through it, then like we just don't recognize it when it's in front of us.
And I just want to say something. I know we're kind of going off track here, but I think it takes a special type of person or a certain type of person to lean into suffering. I think as humans, we are not designed to lean into suffering. I think especially too, like you spend so much time trying to avoid things that hurt, that are hard, that are difficult, that are challenging, right? And there's just so much like lack of awareness of what someone else might be going through. So I'm like really excited that you were able to be honest and transparent, Lyndsey, because a lot of times people don't even want to admit like, oh, I could be that friend or I've done that before, right? And I think it does bring awareness to like, you don't know what someone's going through in the darkness of their own life. Right. So be curious, ask questions. Like, I noticed you've been flaking a lot lately. Like, what's going on? Let's meet up. I'll come over. Take the next step, lean in. We don't lean in anymore today. So I know we're getting off track. I'd love to get off track, but I'm a shift.
So really, we low-key just answered question number 4 about what can women with endo do to center their wellness and mental health despite living with the illness. And biggest thing is our support system. That's what I hear all of you saying. It's all about the support system, who's there for us, whether it's family or our friends, who's in our circle to hold us together when we know it can be a lot. So we'll move on to the next one. What do you do to prioritize your mental health and wellness?
Well, I can say for me is making sure I have that glass of wine on Friday. So I know there's plenty of people that will say it's inflammatory, but there's a lot of things that you give up not voluntarily when you have a diagnosis like this. Gluten, wheat, dairy, soy. Anyone will tell me like, you can eat this. No, I don't do gluten, wheat, dairy, soy. I can just rattle it off. And these are the things that I cannot eat. These are the things that I cannot do. And I decided I don't want to live like that anymore. Well, don't take my advice. I will eat something knowing good and well that I'm going to have a flare up afterwards. But you know what? At least I was able to enjoy the popcorn. Because before it was just I cried every day for a year between each diagnosis. And I got so tired of hearing myself cry. I said, oh, sis, you got to shut up, figure it out. Go to therapy, change your diet, start working out if it's possible, and try to get on the right track, because you can't keep walking around like a ticking time bomb, because that's exactly what it feels like when you don't have a diagnosis. And then when you do have a diagnosis, waiting for your surgery date. So it was important for me to make sure that I was surrounding myself with the right people, also seeing a therapist and doing what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it in a doctorate program. If I didn't feel like going to class, you could send it in an email. I don't have to show up to your classroom. You can send it to me in an email. It was too much for me at the time. And I decided I don't want people to see me like this, because once again, the stereotype of the strong Black woman, no one expected me to actually be going through what I was actually going through. So even talking about it now, I've had people in my cohort contact me. I didn't know you were going through something. Ma'am, you didn't see the bald spots on my head? Stop it. Come on. Like, let's not do this. Sometimes we can be just a little insensitive, but just making sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people. I don't even want to say prayer, but making sure that you stay close to your spiritual foundation as well. That was something that was very helpful for me. And also having a sense of humor about things. If I didn't have a sense of humor about things, once again, I'd be crying almost every single day.
Thank you so much.
I agree. I think the turn came for me when I practiced acceptance around what was going on. I felt like I spent so much time just fighting and trying to get help and trying to do this and trying to do this. And once I accepted like my limitations and where things were at, it like freed up so much emotional and mental energy for me. And totally thankful for my therapist. She's always real, so she's always real, even when it was hard. And I just wanted to be a victim. I just wanted to like really just focus in on the absurdity, the tragedy of what was happening, and kind of being able to come out of that and get reacquainted with myself and my needs as a person and what I wanted to be different was really helpful. I'm also a Christ follower. So like prayer, my church community, there was times where I would go to Bible study and I'll be in so much pain, I can't even contain myself in the room. And these people would pray for me and encourage me and told me like, I'm going to have a testimony, and I do, right? So like for me, prayer, therapy, my supplements, they're expensive. But when I say some of these supplements got some black magic going on, they got some black magic going on. I'm just like, man, I feel so good when I take these supplements and when I eat a certain way. Definitely a lot of what Dr. O tagged, but also for me, like really cutting sugar, because for me, eating is just an enjoyment. Like whenever I'm suffering, I'm like, let's just get the oxtail rasta pasta, okay? Like, let's just do it. But no, like, how do you feel after you eat that? Like really being intentional and mindful and honest with yourself about what caring for yourself looks like with endometriosis. Because for me, it was a big disconnect. I thought caring for myself was doing what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was eat inflammatory food. But no, like caring for myself was eating healthier, taking my supplements, drinking water, walking when I can, and then just accepting when I can't, right? Not fighting it, not feeling like, why is my body doing this? Why am I? Like, these are the things that I do and recommend women to do while they're kind of trying to care for themselves through this terrible disease, because it's a journey. It's not going to be over even after the expert excision. There's still other things, other remnants of things. So it's like, it's a journey. You need to accept and care for yourself and take it one day at a time. We don't know what the next 3 years are going to look like, but what does today look like?
Oh, I just want to say, eat the oxtail, sis. So I'm gonna eat the oxtail. So
I'm thinking about it, but I don't know. But yeah, it's good. It's
the oxtail, suck the marrow out the bone, all of that. But that's my SSP. So
we gonna make it work tonight when I got some kale on the stove. Oh no.
Living in Seattle, you guys are just making me jealous. I'm like, there's no food. I agree with what you all said. And I'm trying to think of like, for me personally, what I do for wellness is I try to think about what's going to bring me the most peace a lot of times. After I've worked hard, after I've, dealt with patients, and I found that that's been water, like going to go take a water walk, just down on the pier or wherever, like if there's a lake, that really brings me like a lot of peace. And I'm starting with that because when I work with clients who are in these situations, like I really start with, how can you bring yourself into a peaceful feeling? Where can we go? Like, what can we do? The world is like not messing with us right now, like it's being really tough on us. So what can we do to bring that peace? I also talk about like naming pain and talking to pain, because a lot of times, like there's just a lot of emotions held in these areas when we're going through that. So when we work on these things, a lot of other stories come out, a lot of different, things that might have been forgotten or suppressed come out. And those are all good things when it does come out. So we tend to think like if we let like dead dogs lie, it'll get better. And we tend to suppress a lot, which goes pretty hand in hand with endometriosis, right? So when we don't suppress and we let that out, that brings about a lot of relief. So I definitely lean in on that a lot because I've just heard so many phenomenal accounts of gaining closure, of being able to like name the pain and just not even feeling it anymore. Shakira was talking about like radical acceptance, which is like along those lines. So I can't say enough how powerful I had found like those exercises with self-talk. And I definitely recommend like some of the things I was mentioning earlier to support like holistic techniques, massaging, nutrition, the supplements Shakira was talking about. I also like invite those in because they are some of the best treatments outside of all of these medical visits.
And I wanted to add one more thing, because this is something new that I'm working on too, like just like your relationship to your body and like somatics, like really focusing on that too. I feel like for me, going through so much medical like trauma and surgeries and pain, I feel very disconnected from my body. So like learning to reconnect with my body, noticing sensations that aren't just pain, because sometimes that's all you focus on. It's just like, oh my, I'm in pain, or I can't breathe right, or I can't do this. But it's like, what feels comfortable, what feels neutral, right? Like re-educating your brain and like that connection to your body. So I just wanted to add that, but I agree with what everyone has shared. And I'm hoping that this is helpful for the ladies, because it's hard out here in these streets, these endo streets.
I'm gonna double add on that because you brought something up that I meant to say. And the fact is that education is a really big part of wellness, okay? And knowing more is a really big part of wellness. So like once I got my hands on a couple of books and I started to realize like, okay, a lot of this is like patriarchal mentality, and I'm going there. I really am, because like even the idea that we kind of need somebody to always tell us like what we need for our bodies is a patriarchal mentality. Always first option of cutting and surgery on women because they're exhibiting some sort of issues is a patriarchal mentality that goes back, we know where it goes back to. So there's like good books on that, like Unwell Woman and a few others that really kind of go into how some of these labels are made. But once you read some of the information about that and look into other like tactics and techniques that women use to connect our relationship with the moon, looking at like our menstrual cycles and our connection to the earth, that really does help us to restore some of that disconnection that Shakira is talking about. And when I was bringing up suppression before, that's that disconnect, right? Like that's where like a lot of people just aren't in tune. Like they, I tell my patients all the time, like, take care of endometriosis like a baby. What does a baby want? What do you want? Like, if you had a baby, you'd be like right up on their every need. Well, that's how you need to kind of like treat yourself. So I definitely think that, you know, a lot of empowerment is really important here too.
Because my talkative ass has to just go ahead and add to that. So we're talking about the body, and one of the interventions that I use with majority of my women clients are standing in front of the mirror and being able to look at yourself directly in the eyes and kind of rattle off positive affirmations. We are so used to telling ourselves that we can't do it. I'm fat. The disease will change your body in some way, shape, or form, either losing weight or gaining weight. So it's definitely important for you to reconnect to your body and standing in front of that mirror and affirming that I am beautiful, I'm capable of doing this. This is going to work out in my favor. A lot of times clients can't do that. It's interesting when I tell people you can't look at yourself in the mirror. That's really interesting. Let's dissect that you don't want to look at yourself. But once again, having a chronic illness, sometimes it could physically change the body and it mentally changes the body. So in order to reconnect, it's a great intervention to use with clients to have them actually look at themselves in the mirror and rattle off some positive affirmations on a daily basis.
All right. I want to thank you all for all of your wonderful responses. Just to recap, one thing that I love that each of you have said is the idea of seeking help and going to therapy, because you're all mental health professionals. But sometimes you see mental health professionals don't, you know, balance it out with their own therapy. And all three of you said that, like, you got to take care of yourself. Meanwhile, your whole, how you live and eat is taking care of others. You got to take care of your mind first and foremost. And I love that all three of you said that. Then one thing I want to point out is y'all all mentioned diet changes, as well as looking into some holistic things to help and manage that pain a little bit better. And then lastly, y'all all touched on that idea of bringing peace and finding what brings you joy back into your life and having that balance. Especially just like with that glass of wine, like me, I love a nice little chocolate bar on Friday, especially these students be a lot. It's like, let me get to my Hershey bar, Lord. That's all I need. That's all I need. And they know they could bribe me with some candy too. that brings that joy, even though maybe a little bit later it might not feel a little good, but at the time it brought me that joy. So just to close out, again, thank you all. Y'all have been amazing. Let's let the people know where they can learn more about you and your social media.
You can find me on Instagram at FKO Therapy. You can also find me on Facebook, FKO Therapy and Consultation Services, and LinkedIn, just Dr. Francesca Owoo.
I feel like an old soul. I'm just kind of like, where can you find me? In the bed? You can find me on Instagram. I am not very active in posting, but I'm on Instagram at Cheerful Heart, MHCPLLC. That is the name of my business. You can also find me at the same name on Facebook. You can also find me on my website. If you would like to work with me, set up a consultation. I would love to bring you into the fold and support you through your journey. And I think that's it. LinkedIn, my government. Yeah, I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm just like an old soul. I'm like, you trying to find me on social media? But Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn is just my government, which is Shakira O'Garro. And I accept follows, whatever you want to call it. I'm literally 70. Okay, I'm gonna pass it to Lyndsey because I'm embarrassing myself.
So on Instagram, I am Kyla Care Therapy. That's the name, KYLA, CARE Therapy. On Facebook is Kylie Care Therapy, and my website is www.kyliecaretherapy.com. Oh, and I'm on LinkedIn as Lyndsey Williams.
All right, y'all. Thank you again so much for participating. It was lovely to meet you all. Oh, where can they find me? Oh, you can find me on Instagram at the Teri Jade, as well as to my nonprofit page, the Mindfield.org. I'm usually there. If you need a good laugh, I do Teacher Chronicles every now and then. And on my page, on my nonprofit page, we're working on some really big things. So definitely stay tuned to the Mindfield. All right. Thank you all.